All right. We are live.
All right.
So yeah, this is just a conversation that Dave and I planned for a few weeks to just talk about some stuff related to objective personality and science and the patterns they're seeing and stuff like that, because I'm going to be addressing some of that stuff in my videos. And I really want to try to get to the bottom of these things because I think they're really cool. And so maybe they can help clear some things up to get us started.
Yeah, great.
So I guess one place I wanted to start was that you guys have seen quite a lot of interesting patterns in your system that you kind of come across but weren't even necessarily looking for.
Oh, yeah.
Like doppelgangers, hair colors, and sexual identities being in certain clustering on certain types.
Right.
And I think that kind of thing's cool because it's like when you're seeing patterns that you weren't expecting to, it's kind of a sign that your method is on to something. And that you might want to keep chugging along to seeing where that goes, even though you don't necessarily know what the final answer is going to be. But what other patterns have you guys been seeing, if any, that you can think of?
Yeah. Let me kind of talk that out as I go here. So it's like it started with when we started playing the, we call the objective typing game, where it's just me and Shannon in different rooms, whether it's called, double blind split test or whatever you want to call it. But like we would type the same people and we would do it in separate rooms. And at first we couldn't get any real consistency with each other than, random coin flips, random chance seems like. Then once we started to find the terms a little more, started to find, more coins, like the jumpers, where some people, their favorite functions are their first and third rather than their first and second. That helped get a little bit more resolution on the code or whatever. So it allowed us to kind of be able to figure out people's types a little bit better because there was more types to work with because people are so different, Mm-hmm. And so when we would get the same type correctly as each other, like, oh, this person's an ENFP, but they're the NETE type. We would both type this person as the NETE type, a Phil DeFranco on YouTube or whatever. And once we would get that right according to each other, doesn't mean he's that type. It's just that we both happen to see that same thing. We would log them away on a Google Doc, but we didn't put any faces or whatever. And we would just be like, oh, we got these right. And we would save them in the NETE doc or whatever. And then after, it wasn't like our main thing. We were just kind of messing around with it. And after we got about a few hundred people, somewhere between 200 and 400 people, like finally there was enough people in these docs of like, okay, let's reorganize the docs. And so I went in and I started putting faces to the people that we had typed correctly. And that's when we realized, whoa, a lot of the people of the same type kind of look similar. And that was the first time that we realized that we were tracking, look like visuals where people of the same type would oftentimes look like each other. And some like extremely look like each other. Like you and I, even in our system, are in very similar or very close to the same type. And with
even like opposite animal stacks, but it's still
right
similarity there. Yeah.
Right. Like the NIFI.
I've seen like the ENFPs that you guys had, so they all had like red hair and beards for the audience. So it's like weird.
Yeah, it is. It's like, so dark hair and thick eyebrows runs in R types, the NIFI, especially the NIFI audios. A lot of them are, have the dark hair and stuff. And it's weird. And so I have a brother that's an ENFP, red hair for him and dark hair for me, And so that's when we thought, this looks like this might be a little bit genetic. And then the one that really hit me hard, that's when I kind of knew, okay, this is going to be more than just a hobby. This looks like this is going to be more of like what my life is going to be committed to, is when we started to see the LGBT, the sexual gender, the sexual preference. At the time, we were still very much kind of just default Christians. We thought we weren't really like super conscious of our views as far as like marriage and LGBT and stuff, but we were more on the side of like, a little bit like even like that stuff is kind of wrong. That's just like how we were raised or whatever, but didn't really like think it through or process it. So as we started to see LGBT on a spectrum and then falling into different types, for example, if you're the ENFPs, if you're an ENFP male, the chances of you being heterosexual is extremely high. If you're an ENFP female in that same little sliver category, the chances of being LGBT or non-heterosexual, however you want to say it, is extremely high the other way. And so it's like we were seeing that clustering. And then from there, we would see health issues, diet issues, stuff like that, and it just kept unfolding from there. So that's kind of the big general picture there.
I see. Yeah. It was interesting that you mentioned specifically that the NIFIs had the dark hair and thick eyebrows. We were making speculation on some people's types. We're talking about like Adam Driver. I don't necessarily know for sure what his type is, but he had those things that people were thinking he might be.
Yeah.
That's it. But
yeah, could be.
I don't know. But yeah, you don't want to necessarily use the anecdotes too much, because then that becomes like sort of circular. But
yeah.
But they're definitely worth tracking when you're using like the rigorous, checklists and things like that.
Right. We had to get caught up with the scientific method because we weren't super scientific people at all. So I was like, we had to start to understand bell curves and clustering and traits and thinking like that to kind of get caught up with. Just because they have red hair doesn't mean they're an ENFP, but lots of ENFPs tend to have red hair, and like getting all that kind of logic sorted out, So yeah, with our checklist, we've really learned, like in our kind of when we type people, is like the first step we do is acknowledge our bias. We acknowledge like, oh, this guy looks like my brother who was this type. That's going to be where I want to make him to be, and so we'll kind of acknowledge that, and then we just start working the checklist of looking for the binary coins, and that's where we can check our work before I turn in my work to be compared to Shan. So it's like a math class. It's like you can check the math, 2/4, and make sure you end up with an even number. You have little games you can do to check your math before you turn it in. So it's like when I turn it in to see, did I get this the same as Shan? I have a bunch of cross checks I can look for to really make sure I'm seeing what I think I'm seeing and not letting my biases take over. And when we get them wrong, when we mess up, just like in math class or whatever, we're getting fast, we're getting sloppy, we're getting cocky. We're like, oh, I totally know what type this is. Oh, I've typed so many people like this. And you start just breezing through the checklist, and then you'll get caught because that's the day I was getting sloppy was the day Shan was not getting sloppy. And then that's when we'll catch ourselves,
It's good to have that accountability.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's kind of, I wish like there's other people in the typology community, who have interesting models, and like they say things like, well, they think I could do what Dave and Shannon are doing, but I kind of wish that they actually would do it, like to try to practice it, because I wonder, like, if you really did go in separate rooms and didn't check, like maybe you could do it, and maybe you would end up actually also though having to like work out some kinks in your system and process and having to improve things, and like it just that I like the accountability aspect of that.
But totally. And I'm seeing so many people on YouTube that really, really can, or we're meeting them, personality community or whatever. Most of the people I meet through YouTube or whatever. But it's like, I really believe there's so many people out there that can do this way better than us. Like, we're just half-assed looking at these patterns going, I don't know, I think this is what they mean. And it's just me and her working away at it. I feel like it's a batting average. Like, anybody can step up to the plate and just get your batting average. Like, oh, you got 3 out of 10. That kind of sucks, but that's your average. And then over time, you can work that to 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10, and work your way up. Some people are more naturally good at doing this or whatever, or their systems, I think, are coming from really understanding parts of it. I agree the same thing. Like, I think a lot of people would really be able to hone in their skills with typing if they played that kind of game. Anyways, it's been working for us. So we encourage people to try it.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. So one other question that I definitely had on my mind, and I've heard some other people mention, is you guys have kind of a unique thing with these, like the animals and animal stacks and things like that. They're kind of neat in the way that they characterize people. But how would you say that you came to using those like animal stacks, and how you connected them with like Tony Robbins' human needs? It's kind of a complex question.
Yeah.
But, if you, to what extent you remember, like how did you come to using that? People are curious about it.
Totally. So it's like, to kind of back up, it's like, this is just my silly opinion. So I view the SFP NTJ, quadra function stack as kind of like more of the grunt primal stack. You got the TE, you got the SE, you got the FI, and it's just like, it's almost like a brute force set of functions. And there's positive and negative. that's just how.
Yeah,
That's just
quadras and socionics. I wonder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's just how I look. I look at the NTPs and SFJs. I don't want to say more evolved, but maybe those functions came later, whatever. But so I see them as kind of opposites, because when I see my friends that are NTPs and SFJs, all opposite functions of me. Again, this is just subjective from my point of view. I see them as having a totally different set of skill sets and think throughs that I don't have the ability to do. So Carl Jung, for example, we guess he's an INTP. So it's like the NTPs have got a brain way to really think and figure out stuff. In my opinion, that's very accurate. It's very impressive. They got a great set of functions. We don't. We just use like brute force. Like with TE, I don't know how the damn logic works. I don't know how it works. All I know is I'm going to sit here with a rock and a stick, and I'm just going to bang on the same thing over and over and over again. So how did we do it? Is we had a goal of like, we wanted to see if we could get more and more consistency with each other. So we just tried the most insane, silliest, ridiculous, asinine ideas nonstop around the clock for years. And most ideas would not make it past the 24-hour mark. And they were just ridiculous and insane and silly. But we would then come up with some random pattern or random idea and then go into separate rooms and then type people, and it would fail, or we'd get some traction, then we would start to evolve it from there. So one silly ass idea that I came up with was that it looked like some people were jumpers. Some people were their first and third. And so we ran with that theory and it stuck. And then when it came to the 4 animals, that was after watching a chimpanzee documentary. And and it was in the summertime too. I remember that. And I went upstairs to the bathroom and I took, one of my famous long 45-minute bathroom breaks. And I'm in there just with a sketch pad and I'm just like recalling the documentary where I'm like, I don't know. There's a million different ways to look at this. It just looks like the monkeys, that what they were doing is in the morning, they were kind of like doing this sleep energy. And then the first thing they would do is they would go consume and they would get all excited and they would gather up their food and they have this high energy. And then they would play and then they would run over here. And then they'd come over here and blast and they would do like sexual stuff. And then they would come back to sleep. And it looked like to me like this kindergarten that had these 4 different stations. And every day they went in these 4 different stations and they were in very different moods. And certain monkeys would rock certain stations. There was one monkey that was extremely sleep, SIFI or whatever the hell type he was. He would just sit there literally with a rock and a stick and just crack acorns. And that's how he released his stress, was just doing this repetitive motion with the acorns. And he dominated the sleep category. And then this monkey dominated the play category. And this monkey dominated the blast category. And so I'm just like, that's kind of weird. And so I came downstairs, I had it on my notepad, I showed it to Shan, she thought it was the dumbest idea ever. So I had to push for it, like, no, really hear me out. She's like, every time you go to the bathroom, you come out with some dumbass idea. I'm like, no, look, I think, what if the sleep guy, what if that's double introverted? The play, what if that's double extroverted? She's like, okay, keep talking. Okay, the consume, that's like consume for self. So it's like SE for self. She's like, okay. And then we couldn't figure out the blast one for the longest time. We couldn't see that one, but eventually we worked on it, So I mean that's how we came up with it. And then we're like, okay, great theory. Sounds interesting. Let's now apply it to typing people. Does it help us improve our numbers? Does it help us improve? We're getting a 60% consistency ratio, and now it jumps up to an 80% consistency ratio with each other, because now you're looking at more variables of the human. I'm not just looking at functions and saviors. I'm looking at the dynamics of how the functions are working together. Now all of a sudden you can see more, with your NI, because your NI is like you're looking for what you already know. Now, if what you already know happens to kind of align with reality pretty good, then it's a hell of a pattern that you can get ahead of. The problem with NI is it's usually so SE, not practical. It goes off into spaceland. You can't get the results. So that was it, man. It was quite a few years of just coming up with crazy ideas and then throwing them at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, but that's just impressive sometimes. You just try lots of things. And sometimes something will eventually you see what works, what kind of has fitness. That's sort of like evolution a little bit. Right. And what's been hard, because then I'll go share with people like say the SFJs and NTPs, they're like, okay, so explain to me your logic. Explain to me your problem. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like having to get caught up to understand and figure out more how it works. And that I feel like is happening every few months. I feel like Shani and I are getting to know usually a certain function in a whole new way. I was watching a girl on YouTube
that a savior SI, and she was explaining SI with a step-by-step method, how they're trusting and building the process. I'm like, okay, wait, all of a sudden that connected with me. And I feel like I understand that a growth process that's continual learning,
Yeah. And it just seems like, yeah, just sort of animal stacks and animals, they just relate to sort of like these sort of primal animal behaviors.
Right. That's why we call them animals, because we got it from a chimp documentary.
And you connected them to Tony Robbins.
Yeah, that was
a bit. There's like what significance and certainty and connection,
right,
and variety.
Right. That was another silly, random, crazy idea, just completely by chance. I happened to be in Tony Robbins, listening to his stuff for a lot of years. First, I was into his stuff first, and then so he had those 6 human needs. It's kind of like the 4 and the other 2, and so I really believed in his work. I really saw that making changes in my life, and in my NIFI, in my subjective world. To me, it was true, right? It seemed to work great for me. And then when I saw Carl Jung's 8 functions, I'm like, that's interesting. And then I'm like, as NI, I'm always trying to compress things down. How can I make them the same? How can I strip away? How can I find commonalities? So it was just some random theory. Let's get rid of these 2 functions of grow and give. Let's kick those out. Let's drop it down to his core 4 of, significance, tribe, control, chaos, control, gather, whatever. And how could we overlap that with the functions? And then it was like, well, then would NI and SI be together? Because it's usually like NI and SE are together because they're a coin, or NI and NE are together because they're both intuition. But it's like, what if you paired up NI and SI? And that was your human need of control. And then understanding what the human need of control means by pulling it from Tony Robbins' understandings, because he spent all those years researching what does the human need of control mean. And now you have that understanding of that human need, and now you have a little bit more specific detail whether that person's NI or SI. And now you're like, oh my gosh, I can understand this person that I'm looking at so much more, because they're saying all this crazy shit. I don't know what they're saying. What are you really going through? What do you really believe? Like, oh, if you're afraid to gather, if you're afraid to improvise, so you're over controlling, and then you're doing that in the abstract or doing that in the sensory, I now can see and understand that pattern so much because I have all of Tony Robbins' work behind, And again, that randomly stuck, that randomly worked. It dramatically increased our ability to understand people and therefore get the same type number as each other. And that's why it stayed,
Oh, thanks for it. All right. Yeah. So one thing I noticed that's interesting, just kind of an interesting observation I had just while you're thinking about these things, is in socionics, a lot of people type you as a logical, intuitive extrovert.
Right.
But anyway, all these systems have, not all these systems, but the socionics, like yours, some versions of socionics have subtype systems,
right,
too. And so it's kind of funny because you guys at your system, your NIFI, and then you have so it's a very introverted sleep functions, but then you've got a pretty extroverted stack for that.
Yes.
And then in socionics, a lot of people see you as a logical, intuitive extrovert, but at the same time, you might be a more introverted subtype. So maybe the way that the types, the subtypes are being understood are kind of opposite.
Right.
In a way, although not everyone accepts subtypes. And another thing is, there's this idea in socionics of the cognitive styles. This is a more complex, advanced idea that not everyone uses. And there's a quasi-determinist cognitive style, dialectical algorithmic, holographic panoramic, and vortical synergetic. Obviously you're not going to know those me just based on the names, but basically the vortical style is the one that the logical, intuitive extrovert, your type, has, and it has a lot of this very evolutionary thinking, trying lots of different things,
right,
and seeing what works. And it does actually help them sometimes figure out patterns that might not be obvious. If you didn't try things, if you weren't just basing it off of some kind of very determinist reasoning that you already figured out. But on the other hand, it's not necessarily as easily explained or logically linked as something like a determinist sort of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think if people are studying personality in the sense of trying to see patterns in a system, like trying to get a personality system, like it's just like any other field or entrepreneurship. It's like we should see lots of different competing fields that have differences, but largely at the core, a lot of overlap. So for me, I'm not like super critical of our personality community. I'm not worried about like splitting hairs and differences because I'm standing back looking at the larger scope of the whole community, going like the fact that as a community and all the differences that they have, that they can look at one crazy nut, like look at myself, for example, and all generally seeing the same kind of thing. Nobody's saying I'm the most introverted person they ever met. Nobody's saying that I'm, not using logic or intuition or whatever. Like people are generally kind of seeing the same thing, describing it in their own different ways, and there's a lot of overlap there. So to me, it's a really good thing. I just would encourage people, like, if we as a community really are onto some patterns here, like using more and more of as many different ways as we can use a scientific process to get triangulation and accountability and tracking the numbers and all that kind of stuff. It's been extremely useful for us.
Yeah. And then another thought that I had is related to the quadra things you were just discussing. Because I remember you mentioned this idea that, like, after was one of the classes, I was still in your classes, that you mentioned this idea that the SCTE and NIFI functions are more like primitive or primeval in some way. And so I was trying to understand that. So I wrote this. I said NIFI, TE, SE are more primitive and primeval because they deal with the spectrum of the outer world as such, SCTE, noting what is occurring as plainly and factually as possible to survive, while also having a largely unexpressed deep inner world with mysterious dreams that do not yet have a reference, NIFI. As we get to TI, SI, NEFE, we narrow down the factual outer world to suit our needs and desires with models, technology, grammars, and systems, TI, SI, and we externalize the inner world into complex networks of social values and possibilities to the stars, NEFE. And I mentioned this idea of like surfer language, how that was like gamma and things like that. That was interesting. And so the thought I had about this now is that as far as like the evolution of these functions, this is very rough thinking, but in socionics, there's the distinction between sensing and logic functions versus intuition and feeling functions, or ethic, as they sometimes call it. And they sometimes call that like explicit or implicit, or sometimes they'll even use like external, internal. I don't like that definition as much, but there's something to it, I will say, because that kind of related to what I just said, like in sort of like a primitive sort of way, like SCT are naturally focused on kind of like the facts in the outer world, and NFI are very like dreamy. And then when you get these more evolved functions, almost like we adapt the outer world to suit us over time, and we bring our inner world out.
Right.
So there's just kind of like that switch that happens when you get to the NEFE, TISA functions.
Right. That's my personal like bro science Dave theory. That's how I kind of look at it. Like I remember like sitting in the backyard, just again running a bunch of stupid random ideas. And I remember like in Oregon here, we got a lot of wildlife, so you go out in the spring, there's always something moving around. And I remember just like looking at the bugs, looking at the worms. I'm like, okay, so if I were to build a program myself, like if I were to build life, if I was in charge of building life and I had to start with the simplest things, like what would I enable that earthworm to have? Would I give them FE? Does the earthworm, do they need to know about the values and the emotional spectrum and the feeling of every other earthworm? No, I kind of want to just give him FI. It's like, so if he moves towards the hot patio, he can feel that for himself, And then it's like, what do I need him to sense? Do I need him to really like organize his little house and get the SI all in order? Like, no, just need him to kind of scan, this kind of like, if I were to just pick two functions and I were to build a little insect to compete at Robot Wars, it'd be, something along the lines of just very simple self-relating kind of function stacks. And then as it, gets more evolved, now it's like, okay, caring about others, feeling for others, being to use intuition to think around corners and see the abstract in an extroverted way. Like, to me, that just seemed like functions that might have come later. Like the way we're looking at the the brain in our theory is like we're all born with like, and then they might all come at once for all I know. You know, like it could be that you are finding animals that have NE and SI and all the rest already. Like just another theory is just that like you just got the 4, you know, thinking, feeling, intuition, sensing, and then you just get a positive or extroverted charge. And maybe that was the deal all the way back then. I don't know. You know, just try to piece together trying to piece together like why is evolution coming up with these different tool sets, you know, as we're competing as a species for resources or diversity or whatever the game is, you know.
Yeah. Like I don't really know exactly what the evolutionary order of the functions is, but there's a lot of different sociologists who have theories about that,
right?
And they don't always agree. But the point is, there does seem to be something there as far as either whether they're all there and they just maybe play different roles. Or
right. And that's just a personal,
I don't know.
That's a personal little like interest of mine, you know. It's something I like to know more about.
And it would be interesting to see like if we could get down to like what the functions start to mean in terms of even things maybe like neuroscience or something like that, then could you have a chance at maybe studying similar ideas in animals or something like that, like what's going on in their cognition and how similar is it really, like a monkey or even dogs or something like that.
I know anybody that's like had a dog as a pet, you're like, I don't know what to tell you, but there's a little person in there. There's extreme personality. Like we had,
they want to type it.
Yeah, right. I don't blame them. Like our in high school, my parents had a standard poodle, and the poodle, they had puppies. So there's like 8 different puppies, and like seeing the diversity of extreme type, the super shy ones, super extroverted, masculine, dominant ones. Like, I mean, they were just born that way, just an extreme personality spectrum when you're looking at 8 dogs that you watch born and raise, you know? So, and everybody sees it. Everybody knows that Spot, we literally named one of the dogs Spot. That was a funny story, but like everybody sees that Spot is the introvert, you know, ISFP or whatever of the family. And Barkley was the double masculine ESTP, you know, wants to wrestle you all the time, you know? So everybody was seeing the same interpretation from the same dog, you know.
Yeah. So one other thing people were asking is that, you know, you and Shannon do. I mean, you're in some ways you're pretty opposite types. You know, you're like an audio NFI. In some ways, she's a visual TESC. So there's a lot of opposite there, which is good. But then also like you guys both have those same functions. So some people wanted to know, like, you know, might it not make things more objective if you eventually maybe get more typers that have like the opposite functions? I think you mentioned something about that before, that could be useful. And I think also just in having these kind of conversations on YouTube and with the community and things like that, the thoughts of people who have different function stacks.
Totally. If I could have it my way, which I don't, like the dream team of the first 8 to 16 people here would be, you know, exact opposites. So we wouldn't be doubling up on SFPs or NTJs or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's been interesting to watch people in the community and in our class and stuff over the past year or so of just a spectrum of different types that are able to get objective typing to some degree. I mean, they're well over the 50 or 60% mark. A lot of people, as far as like, we'll put out who we're going to type next week for the class. And so everybody kind of runs in and tries to watch as many videos as they can, have their guesses of what we're going to come up with next week, and be able to see that, I don't know, there's probably at least 20 people or so that are getting a lot of traction on that. And so that's one of the things that we're always looking for is like, okay, what types are they? Is there like one of the craziest types that have been good at objective typing in our little community is ESFPs. I mean, who would have saw that coming? Because they're just like, oh, I get it. You just sit there and you take in tons of data. You watch the person's videos, 30 hours of videos, and you just take in more and more sensory, and then you wait for the pattern to emerge. We're like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then also, too, seeing SFJs and NTPs also being able to do it. We're like, that's interesting because it's like, I don't know how we're doing it without NI. It's like when I go to type somebody, like I have these preloaded patterns and I'm just running, you know, the same few patterns over. And if your patterns were not personal with NE, how the hell are they doing it? I don't know, but some of them are doing it. So that's been really cool and interesting to see. It does seem to be kind of the belief that I have and most people have is anybody can do anything. You know, you and I could have got into professional sports when we were younger. We could have, not really genetically built for it, but could have, you know, or
could have tried, but you might not have succeeded as much as some.
You might have got farther than you.
I think talent can sometimes be a thing too.
Exactly.
But
I do think if you're Darren Brown, you're built for this. But for the rest of us, you can put in more work and get some degree of success in it. So that's
That
how
would
I'm
be
seeing it.
interesting to see someone like Darren Brown doing personality typing. In.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. And Shani's she's not like her in our system. Her double demon is NI. So her double demon is patterns. That's the hardest thing in the world for her to do. So it's been harder for her. And yes, she has the same function sets as me, so that's great or whatever. But yeah, she had to take a very it came harder for her to learn how to track the patterns and stuff than it did for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you were like early on, like some of your videos and saying, as far as like people who are good at objective typing, you mentioned that like some sensory types were pretty good at it, and like you were trying to like downplay how much that sometimes the intuitives get kind of oversold.
Right. Totally.
Typology, which is definitely true. Like I think you can see it most in MBTI and things like that, where like it's just people, like anyone who's like intelligent or has like a common sense, like oftentimes thinks they're intuitive, and it's like that's just not how it is at all. Like the sensory types are really smart, and they're very thorough in tracking the details and things like that, and intuitives can come with all kinds of crazy theories that just don't that seem like they make sense in your head, but when you like really put them out into the road and try to test it with reality using kind of rigorous methodology, it doesn't necessarily work out the way that maybe they hoped.
Right, totally. We're seeing the same thing. The way that we kind of see it, using this for personal growth stuff, is like usually your first function, whatever you have as a first function, you've screwed it up. You've overdone it. And then your fourth function, you can throw that in the trash too. And it's like whatever you have in the middle is generally what people are normally good at. Like, so the double observers, the IPs and the EJs, it doesn't matter if they have sensory or intuition as a savior or a demon. Those are the types that generally get intuition better because they have sensory and intuition in the middle. Again, doesn't matter which one's the savior, where they get a relative balance. They're not overshooting or undershooting. Therefore, it's extremely useful. You get these lead NIs or lead NEs, and they do such Hail Marys of their crazy ass theories that are hit or miss.
It's hard to communicate. Yeah.
Yes, you can't communicate. You can't replicate it. There's no sensory grounding to it. So. Yeah, it's like respecting the functions or respecting the balance. So it does make sense that a lot of sensory types have come in and have done well at this because they're matching their sensory and their intuition, or the intuitives the other way around. Like for me, it was really hard to sit down and take in the facts of somebody's life and video and just shut up about it. Just sit there for a couple hours and just take in the facts. Don't guess yet. Guessing comes later. And that took me a while to train myself to use my SE more and stop guessing 2 seconds in, And
that relates to those ideas of the double deciders and double observers. And that's just basically that, like the people who are double deciders are more balanced with the self and the tribe and with people in general. And so like it's just not that much of an issue. Like they can kind of get along with people, and then people disagree with them a bit. It's fine.
Right.
You're going to be like this is not something they're going to have like a freak out about. Like a collapse.
That's the joke. That's the joke. It's the thing that you're good at.
But you're on like obsessing over like the grammar of something or like how someone's putting out this information, like they might flip out over that,
right?
Or trying to control them, right? Like conspiracy theories and things like that. Like I've certainly gotten into that a little bit, but I don't like to too much. And then double observers is more like the opposite. Like the control and the chaos is, my understanding is that they're not too much either way. Like they can make a plan if they have to, or they can just kind of wing it and be more fine with that. But sometimes if some person in the tribe's doing something they don't like that can really set them off.
Right. It's one of the strongest patterns to see when we're getting videos from people. One of the fastest, easiest things to see is whether they're a double observer or a double decider. I mean, just take our conversation, for example. You and I are talking about missing information. We're talking about solving the puzzle and figuring out the system and personality. We are spending very, very, very little time on that guy. Well, did you know this guy over here did you wrong? Like, yeah, that's all right. Do you know this group over here thinks you're an idiot? Yeah, that's all right. It'll work.
It's like you work around it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the biggest problem in the world. The biggest problem in the world is the missing information and science and all the right. So it's like, well, the double deciders will unite. Like, I'll deal with these people because we gotta buddy up to deal with the real problem, which is the missing information. And then when we get videos from, even what's been fascinating too is when you watch deciders or single deciders, IPs and EJs in the personality community, they'll have the same conversation we just had for 35 minutes, but they'll mention people's names. They'll mention the books of the guy, Bob Johnson, he wrote this, and Daryl Whitaker, he says this. And there's this constant processing of the actual people. Because you and I will be like, oh yeah, an idea, a concept. But they'll be like, okay, this idea, this concept, that came from this person. And there's a processing of the people going on. And that's where, like, in our opinion, it's not going to be the hardest thing in the world for AI to eventually track this kind of stuff, because you can literally just start tracking how many times in an hour do you say him, her, people, them, me, you, and then listing out names. And then how many times per hour are you talking about, the thing, the concept, or whatever? It does. That's all Shanny and I are doing. We're just sitting down and watching. Where are you doing a little too much or too little of?
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, like what you're doing, and sometimes might not even necessarily notice.
Oh yeah.
But, yeah, because like sometimes you mentioned, sometimes people think that like they're like noticing their demon functions and think, well, I'm really good at this, but then like they don't realize that actually like how much more other people just do that automatically, and how much they're doing these other things they don't even realize.
Right.
But anyway, one other thought that I had about that, I was thinking about how something like double observers or double deciders could relate to socionics, because it's not really as similar of a concept as they have there, because the systems might not necessarily translate neatly like one-to-one. You might have to be some like contortions, because they define things differently, like the functions and things like that. So it's not necessarily about a problem that they don't correspond one-to-one. But it's interesting that the single observers are very focused on things, and the double observer and the double observer single deciders are very focused on people. In socionics, the functions that relate most to people, I would say, are actually the ethical or feeling functions. So I wonder if even some of the more, not all of them necessarily, but some of the more like logical single deciders might be actually like a feeling type in socionics in some ways. But there's also things like socionics, like subtypes and things like that, where the variation in that might be explained by the fact that they have like a particular accentuation on some kind of more logical function, but their type's still more ethical or feeling, so they're focused on people. And a single observer might more commonly either be logical types or have some kind of fixation on some sort of logic or information oriented.
Right. Yeah.
That's. I'm not sure how it will play out. I haven't tested that theory rigorously.
Yeah. That's good. That took us a lot to kind of weed through, because we would get types like Shani, for example, we've typed her as lead TE, but then double activated feminine FI at the bottom. So it's like there's the human need of caring about people is there, TE or FE, and so there's a constant care of the EJ caring about people. But then her emotional state is double activated, meaning her animals are hitting it twice, and then it's feminine. So it's constantly laughing or emotional or crying. And so there's just this wild wash of all these intense emotions, and she's caring about people. I remember when we first started getting into personality and stuff, like we couldn't figure out what the hell type she was, because it's like she's not a normal EST or ENTJ or ESTJ or ENFJ. Like nothing was working, nothing was fitting. Like, how do we explain the emotions, and then the aggressive logic, and then the shoving away of emotions, and then it was just a big conundrum that we could never really sort out, And then it wasn't until we started getting more splits of the coins where once we realized that there was ENTJs that were TE and SE, because she hates control, she hates organizing, she hates abstract, she loves gathering, so she's very ESFP like. So like she just wasn't fitting in anywhere in anything. And it wasn't until we were able to chop down to around 64 types or 128 or whatever, when we started to understand like masculine and feminine, and then the jumpers were like, oh, you have masculine TE at the top, and you're TE and SE, so you love gathering, hate organizing, and then you have these feminine demon emotions. So when your emotions are coming out, they're so crazy and erratic, and she doesn't have super control over them. That finally started to click and make sense, because that's the same challenges we'll type some people, and they're very Myers-Briggs like. They seem to be kind of in the middle of the bell curve, and they line up very perfectly to the profiles that are out there. There's a lot of people that kind of hit that pretty well, you know. But then there's the people on the edge of the bell curves that are like Shani, where, you know, it's an ENTJ with all non-Myers-Briggs wiring. It wasn't until we had a spot for that could we identify it. Otherwise, we would get to types like her and we would spin and we wouldn't know what to call it. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. Yeah, like something I've encountered as well in studying some different typology models. Some like, you know, type you more like just in one of the 16 types, and then sometimes, you know, systems have come across with, you know, more adaptations and subtypes. And I like at least the systems that explore that. I'm not saying they're always perfect, but, you know, that the psyche's an adaptable, very complex thing, and there can be kind of like contradictory things happening. And I think that it's good if a model can at least in principle account for that. And I've seen some other people like that in the sociologist community where they get typed as all kinds of different things by different tools. I was just talking about this the other day with someone. Yeah. And yeah, it's like, I think it was like 7 types or something, or 8 types or something they've been typed as.
Yeah, right.
So like, there's so much complication, and it is important to address in some way.
Right. With our system,
it's hard.
What it is, right. Once it got to 512, that's 512 types, but then you times it by male and female, it's actually 1024 or whatever. So it's like once we get down to girls that are the exact same type as Shani or same type as me or whatever, that's when there's not a lot of differences. That's where things get extremely similar, and you're only factoring in a few other factors of like age. I think that's, you know, if you have somebody who's the same exact type as me but way older or way younger, yes, that's going to factor in. You got to look for like. Am I back?
Oh yeah, I just cut out for like 5 seconds.
It took a commercial break there. When we get down to the 512 type, that's where it's far more similarities than differences, especially if people are the same age, the same culture, kind of stuff like that. That's where it gets crazy the same, you know, like how they'll choose their hair, tattoos they'll get. That's also always a fascinating one. Like, you know, you go to a tattoo parlor, free choice, get whatever tattoo you want. Oh, look at that. You picked the same layout in the same exact place that 9 out of 10 other people of your exact same 512 type also did that you don't know. Oh, you do your hat this way. Oh, that's so cute, right? You're such a free spirit, just like everybody else in your type or whatever, especially if they're coming from a common cultural background or whatever. So that's where it's gotten freaky weird. That's where it's gotten freaky useful. Like if we have somebody on file that we have more, if we've typed more than 10 of them before, that's when it's like, we can get scary in the predictions of whatever you want. Because we can go into the file and like, all right, so here's somebody we typed of your same type, and we've got 20 of them on file, and we could say the exact number out of the 20 people, this many of them have dogs, and of those dogs, most of them have this type, and of that type, they name them this silly type of a name. So I mean, you could get way down into what their bedspread looks like, how they take a shower, based upon you're just pulling the data from the other groups, the other people in that category that are all doing very similar things. And it gets, it's really hilarious. And it's the predictability level is like a 10 out of 10, but then it also is like extremely, like humbling. Like when you stare into the abyss of 10 of the people of your exact same type, and they all say the same silly stuff and do the same silly stuff and think they're a hot shot. They try to land the same bad jokes. You're just like, oh my God. It's just like the ultimate cringe. And it really forces you to reevaluate, wait, all these fears I've had, all this blame I've had, all this, they did me wrong. That's the same load of shit everybody else of my type says. Like, so none of that is real. Like it's just, it really, and like, I'm laughing about it, but like, it really knocks people into the darkness. And that's a big thing with our work, is like, this is darkness land. It's really, really funny and interesting. But when you're staring into that's you, and like, you're instantly just cringing at all of the bad things about you. And you're like, all the bad things people have said about you your whole life, there it right is, you know? So that takes a lot to process. It does seem to be that the brain the natural psyche doesn't want you to know who the real you is. It just wants you to know who, whatever ego or thing you've created. It doesn't want you to,
comfortable, easy savior sort of routine without dealing with some difficult aspects of life that maybe would be difficult but rewarding potentially.
Yes. And it's so hard. It's so hard. It's very much of a, you got to keep diving down. You got to keep facing the darkness to where you come out on the other side, where it's just like, it's just the thing of like, I guess it's a couple of patterns related to you get the Christmas video back. This is more so when I was a kid, when everybody didn't have a phone, but like you would only see yourself on videotape like once a year, so like you would get the video back from Christmas time and you're like, oh my gosh, I look that way, I sound that way, I'm so embarrassed. You see yourself on video, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. So it's like that, on an extreme kind of high level. And then it's also like it's getting down to where, say you're in high school and everybody makes fun of you because you got silly hair or you're skinny or overweight or talk funny or whatever the thing is that's weird about you, and it's like, it's the kids that learn to like beat the bullies to the punch, where you go in and you make fun of people, you make fun of yourself. I'm the goofiest, I'm the biggest, dumbest, know-it-all, blaster, NF. I don't listen. I'm just saying my same old rack of crap. I think I'm such a hot shot. I'm a consume last know-it-all. Like, you're beating people. They're like, that is how we view you. Wait, that we say those bad things about your back, behind your back, that those bad things about you. So it's really getting down to owning that without having that destroy your ego, to be fine with, yes, I can see, I am somewhat aware of the horrible bad things about me that everybody else in my life has to deal with, and all the bad things they say behind my back. And I see that and I accept that. And then I'm still also building, growth and love and other good things about myself on the other side of that. And then like being in the balance where you're never letting that darkness go under the water, going under the conscious. So it doesn't come back at you once a month in a giant tidal wave where somebody finally tells you you're a jerk. And you're like, wait, what? No, I'm not. It's like, oh, you always know you're a horrible person. You know specifically how and why, and you know that it's normal of your type, and you know that everybody else has a weird thing too. And you process that, you resolve that, and you talk about it at every freaking breakfast time to keep it up at the conscious level. So it's okay. That then allows you to kind of enjoy the good things about yourself without having those tidal waves, not without having those, I'm the greatest person ever, and then I suck. I'm the greatest person ever, and then I suck. That kind of seems to be the default setting that you eventually work your way out of, kind of a lot there. But anyways, it's just like drinking our own medicine here. This fun little hobby, we're going to do personality. Like, it's just absolutely destroyed our life, just sent us to the bottom of hell. And then we've had to like slowly grow up and come out of it. And just end up as people that are growing more and more towards accepting the darkness and the light, and choosing a life of I don't want to be enslaved to my functions. I know they're always there. I know they're dominant. I know they take over, but I want to truly be able to get those other two human needs that Tony Robbins talks about that we threw in the trash can, of actually being able to grow and give,
Yeah. I know that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, even if you have like this very complex model in a way, that some people think isn't necessarily very elegant, or not as elegant as it could be, but you're tracking like these very simple binary coins and patterns to build it up on that. You can just, with that focus on perceiving and being consistent on very simple patterns, it's interesting what patterns that are just undeniable that you can just kind of come across. And I like that focus on patterns as opposed to just like reasoning and arguments, things like that. That's so much of typology is based. Like, you can always come up with some kind of like rationalization for a model or something that makes sense in your head. But at the same time, like, and I'm not saying that's not important at all, but like, you don't necessarily know if you could go to a separate room and agree with someone that on their own without just agreeing with someone whose arguments you just think are strong because you think they're impressive.
Right.
Or and you can only do, reasoning and rationalizations based on the patterns you've already acknowledged or have already been forced to acknowledge by some kind of data of some sort. So I'd really like to see more focus on that just in general and the typology.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's good that your system brings.
Yeah.
And then that also relates to this idea that you're talking about of the darkness. And that even gets into something like, I know you guys, it's important beyond just objective typing, you guys do bias training, right? And I know that there were people who are curious about that because they've heard it was very grueling and difficult. And so they were worried that even there might be some people who want to do objective typing, but it could be off-putting to them to some degree.
Yeah.
But I don't really know much about exactly what you guys do. So what are some of some of the things you guys have been doing for bias training?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've been the sticking point to all this, the gotcha point, the catch in all this is going to be training people at scale to be able to do this, to be able to work as a team, because it's that's the point of you got to be able to try and break away from your addictions to your saviors, which is not a fun or easy thing to do. I think long term, like I was saying earlier, AI or genetics or whatever could really kind of unleash typing it at scale. But still, there still needs to be a team of people that are interpreting the data, getting to know humans, and being able to write this profile.
It would help to put it, to kind of start with people, and then eventually we can get it into some kind of data. Because if you just have a bunch of a pile of statistics from AI, you're still gonna have to interpret that.
Exactly. It's just because it's gonna be just me and Shan. We gotta get a team of people here. So it's we're looking at you can't be an INTJ and show up and say oh, I'm gonna take care of all the things, I'm gonna do all the controlling, and hey, no, we don't need you for your damn saviors. You're just gonna get in the same loop that we warn everybody else about. And so it's we've always been kind of having a couple of people here at a time, kind of test them out with assistants and stuff like that. So where it's evolving into is we're finding that a lot of the quote unquote bias training we can do before they even get here. We're basically looking for people that are at the point in their life that they randomly got to their own selves, that they're preaching their demons. Those are the people that we're looking for, because then it's we don't have to do all the hard work of breaking them down and getting them to see that, look, all of these life reoccurring problems that are happening in your life are still actually coming from you. I know you can see it in everybody else. But your problems in your life are actually still coming from you. No, right? So you let life kind of ground them down, and you meet these people every once in a while. And a lot of them are usually 30 or above, where they've been around the planet enough times. We are meeting some younger kids in their early 20s that have, however, life has gotten them in a hard spot to where they are in a very kind of dark, self-reflective, oh my God, this is me kind of state. And they're moving towards their demons to try and get that balance. And it's you can really see it on somebody, because it's a lot of darkness, it's a lot of nihilism, it's a lot of oh my God, it's a lot of falling down the hole. But then the growth mindset of wanting to build themselves back up and out. So it's we're looking now that our community is kind of getting bigger, that we're looking to just start with somebody that is already at kind of their broken spot, already realizing that they need to be, that they themselves are preaching their demons. Then from there, it's a lot easier, because it's not this constant battle of for example, say we hired somebody, right? Then we have 100 departments, 100 things to do. And the top departments are the cool departments. That's what everybody wants to do. Oh, I want to do the typing. I want to do the science. Okay, yeah, so do I. That's the stuff at the top. Anyways, we have this whole other Maslow pyramid of stuff to do around the house and the business and the startup. And there's a lot of nuts and bolts that nobody else wants to do. Let's just take one. Let's just say, this is funny when we have people over to try out here and stuff. It's okay, can you own the trash? Oh, of course, I can do the trash. I can do the trash all day long. So they do the trash. They're the difference between doing the task of the trash versus owning it are so extreme, because it's can you own the trash? That means day in, day out, are you responsible to make sure that the team has that little tiny department taken care of? Or is the trash overflowing because you forgot? Or maybe you were busy, or maybe you were drunk, or maybe you were really upset and you left. Or maybe you're yelling at somebody else. Maybe you were working on something more important because your saviors said you need to go work on this, and then you left it. And that's just 100% of the people all the time. They can't. And then breaks their mind. They're why can't I own this little task consistently? Oh, it's because your brain's shooting you off everywhere else, So it's starting them very small of look, it doesn't matter the damn department. all of this is fake. All of this is not real. It's all going to blow up in the sun in a couple of million years anyways. Like, you're all stardust. Like, stop attaching your ego to, I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to do that thing. That's just your saviors attaching your ego to some damn task. It's like, all of these things are important, whether you're owning the trash or taking this to science someday, or working with the FBI or whatever, some big lofty goal. It's still, can you consistently build these little departments? Can you work as a team? Can you be consistent? Can you work with others and all this kind of stuff and overcome your demons? And so it's just starting them on those small, little, simple things for the sake of growth, not for the sake of ego. The default setting is, if I do the amazing thing, then I'm awesome. Then people will see I'm amazing. We call it like character versus status. The character role is like, okay, I want to win at trash, so I can win at laundry, so I can win at groceries, so I can win at doing emails, so I can win at editing, so I can win at doing videos, so I can win at actually helping at typing, so I can win at leading a team, so I can win at science. So then they're moving their way up, and they're using these different stages as character growth, and just the whole kind of grown-up way of doing it or whatever. So it's you got to wait for somebody to be in that position in life, to where a lot of times too, it helps, like, if they've gotten amazing things when they were younger, so they've already got the trophy and they already did the cool stuff and they already see how meaningless it is and how empty it is, So we're just really kind of looking for somebody that is naturally at kind of a broken state because the world's beat them up, and they're seeing this stuff on their own, that they need to start owning their demons. And then also that just doing objective tasks, whether it's getting the same type as your partner or keeping the trash clean every week, those are just platforms for growth and building, So that's kind of
one quote by Carl Jung that relates to what you're saying. I forgot exactly. It was like something like, people can't find God because they won't look low enough. They always imagine it's going to be some like, grand, like, feel good thing. But like, a lot of times the thing you need to do to grow most is like, you're just your own shadow, or even like mundane things maybe, and like constantly improving in that. And that's hard. It's hard for me. I don't have an easy time with that kind of stuff, doing like getting better, like the mundane things in life. Like, I can be pretty lazy.
Right.
But also I see this too, like, just in the, typology community, like, too, like, if everyone wants to, like, sort of, not everyone, but a lot of people want to, like, support a particular model or something like that, and like, they're saying like, this model's right, and and I don't have to like go out and research the other ones. You got to convince me that my model's wrong. But I think that's almost like the opposite attitude. Like, we got to like look at like all the patterns that we're seeing, and that's something I haven't always had the easiest time with myself, with my NI control box.
Right. Yeah.
But
me too,
I've kind of like I failed so much that so bad.
Yeah. Me too. Me too. It's.
I used to do the Podler stuff. I think you may remember, and that was very like, this model's the only right way, and like everything else is just totally wrong.
Yeah,
and I can't agree with that anymore at all.
Yeah,
and it's just like you gotta almost like actively try to trick yourself and take responsibility for what you don't know or don't easily see, and I think that's very easy to underestimate because you don't see it.
Right. Right. Totally. Yeah. Just jump in there real quick. Like, what I saw in my own life of doing 35 years of not paying to my demons at all. So if I didn't want to look at it, I wouldn't look at it at all. And I'm talking not pay taxes or care about relationships or whatever. And so it's like, when we moved into, we're still in the same house. We moved into this rental house that was just out of control chaos. And like, there was literally like giant sized rats living underneath the house and in the attic. And it's just, the whole thing. And so it's like, you use underneath the house as a perfect symbolic thing of like, that's my demons. It's dark. I don't want to look there. I don't want to look at these other systems. I don't want to look at other people's point of view or whatever your, demon blind spot is. What I found is that reality and other people and other systems and everything are actually rather quite nice and loving and workable. Like, do you know how little work you actually have to do to own the underneath side of your house? I have found out. First of all, it takes 2 years of absolute hell where you got to go pay your demons. And it's just like, I remember for months, for 2 years straight, I couldn't figure out, I got the rats out, but I couldn't get the mice out because they were so small, they're coming in through cracks. I finally had to go underneath the house underneath and on the outside with a little spray can of foam, just spraying the whole thing. I don't know where they were coming in at, but eventually I just foam wrapped the whole house, and voila, they finally didn't stop. They finally stopped coming in. The point, it was like 2 years of hell to finally deal with the tidal wave of cleaning all that neglected area out. And then from there to maintain it is rather doable. It's rather nice. I have a whole little lighting system on where I'll look down about once a month. I'll look down, I'll just look for drops, like little water droplets. I have the lights where I can see the pipes. I'll look for rat shit, and I'm just keeping an eye on it. What I'm saying is, like, it doesn't take a lot to just half-ass kind of own your demons, in the sense of you're not getting a massive tidal wave. I have found that rather than like shoving away and telling people like, no, I don't want to see your damn system. No, I don't want to read your damn email. No, I don't want to see your thing. Even though I'll still feel that way, like I'll still like, I'll take a look. What the hell? I'll look at it for 20 minutes. Yeah. I'll
see if they have like a point or something like that. Something
just
you take from it.
Yes. Because then it creates imagine a pipe that's just completely closed off versus like a little bit that can flow through. Because then it's like the outside world's like, all right, look, this guy's a know-it-all. He's super NI. He's not listening to a damn thing. But if you really kind of hit him hard enough, he will take in 1%. So the outside universe is like, look, we don't want to kick your ass. We don't want to tidal wave you. We'd rather work with you. If you can just listen to a little bit, we're not asking for a lot. And I'll see the same with Shani. She'll have a harder time with emotions or whatever. It's just like, hey, the outside world doesn't need like hearts and flowers all goddamn day long. It's just a little bit of emotional ownership goes a long way. And so watching her, you discover that, etc. So anyways, that's just what I've really found, because then it puts me more in an encouraging thing of like, yes, my demons are still hard. Yes, I'm constantly blind to them. Yes, I don't want to do them. Yes, they're probably still going to kick my ass in 10 years anyways. I know. But it's like, I'm finding that it's not impossible to make the IRS happy. I did it. They are now my friends. It's not impossible. Again, I had to go through 2 years of absolute hell to pay my dues of all the years of neglect. But in the end, it's not impossible to make the IRS happy, even though once in my mind I thought it was. So that's what we're finding with the demons. That's what we're always like encouraging others. It's why we like to buddy up with opposites, because it's like, how the hell do you not see this as the hardest thing in the world? Like, oh, because I have it in the middle and it's super easy and obvious. Like, okay, how is your brain firing that? I'll look at the ENTJs. We have an ISTP guy that comes over and helps him with house construction. He has SE and NI in the middle, and with T at the top. I'm like, all right, how is your brain making this so fast, fun, and easy? That's our new phrase. Fast, fun, and easy. Is it fast, fun, and easy? I need to make these demons fast, fun, and easy. And then I guess it's just very freeing then, and very confidence building to go, oh my God, I did it. I owned underneath the house. Oh my God, I listened to this other person and their wacky ass, silly ass theory and kind of saw some value of it and made a friend. Oh my God. Like, there's some positivity in my demons, and then that gets addicting. Then you wake up tomorrow morning and forget the whole goddamn thing and like still don't want to do your demons.
It's just like an addictive sometimes those functions.
Yeah.
This guy has a question from like 10, 15 minutes ago. He said that because I really agree with, first of all, with all of this, that it can be really hard to even see or own your demons, and I think that you really have to put a lot of effort into doing that, like consciously, because you're not going to do it on like automatically. You got to kind of want it. But he said, could typology, I assume he means, or like objective personality, be useful also to highlight some like the positive aspects of your personality too, to maybe make you feel less isolated? Like maybe it could help understand. And I think we already saw a little bit of that with you mentioned with the LGBT stuff, even that you were just mentioning, like that caused you to be more accepting of that.
Yeah, no, that's what's the guy's name? Who said that?
Yellow LE.
Oh, Yellow LE. Okay, so that's a really good point. That's something that that I am seeing that we, as me and Shan, we want to start going more towards that. We want to start going more towards really talking more about the positives that people have and how they can use their strengths. Because a lot of times we're seeing what a lot of people are doing to get out of their hell is they're using their strengths back on their weaknesses. I'll over NI something to hell and then do 20 minutes of SE, so you're using your savers. We've originally come the first couple of years on a conscious swing of the Myers-Briggs community with so Hearts and Flowers, so My Little Pony, so much all about doubling down on your strengths, which we saw as like, no, you're damn.
I remember you made this video, like you got to hate your type, and I actually like that video because like it just, I know that it could be a bit like brash sounding, but like at the same time, like it's so easy to even like want to be a certain type because it sounds cool, or like,
Right.
and or just exactly not focus on your demons, not realize actually the problems that you have, which is one of the main areas of growth that you have with it.
Right.
But yeah, it's true that maybe some types could get bullied or something like that, or have some serious issues, things like that, and it can be valuable to acknowledge that they're not too bad. Actually,
Right.
maybe they might think they are.
Right, totally. And it's so hard because when you're talking to a general audience, you're looking at the general trend is the Myers-Briggs community got way too, Mary Poppins, My Little Pony, you're the special awesomest one. But then we're also seeing, no, in fucking reality, it's your overactive saviors that's causing the problem. And, then you start hitting those too much. Now you have more reasons to hate yourself because you're not realizing you're talking to this kid over here in Wisconsin that has a really hard problem with depression. And now you're making his life worse. So it's like, we have felt like we've come out so hard the first couple of years, just punching people in the face really hard. They're like, we've made our point that you suck, your saviors are making it worse. It's a big tidal wave. You got to get out of that. But then from that, one of the tools is, one of the most important tools is finding the good things that you are good about, what you do love about yourself, what you can do, and then using those to leverage. Watching the people that we watch every week in the class thing of like, when the people come through that will type that are like, usually they're older, 40s, 50s, 60s, and they have found some kind of balance with their saviors and demons, and they have found the areas that are hard for them and what they love about themselves, and they finally found that balance. We'll use that as kind of encouragement. So really good point. There's a whole world there. Got any more questions from people?
Oh, I think this is a friend of mine was asking about Ryan dichotomy, Schrodinger's colonoscopy, or proctologist in terms of shadow integration. She makes these very complex jokes sometimes.
Tell her I'll look into it.
Funny. Oh yeah. So Ryan dichotomies are these complex aspects of socionics that tend to be more controversial. Like, there's like basic dichotomies like logic versus ethics, and sensing versus intuition, and introversion, extroversion, rational, irrational. Those are kind of like the basic like Jungian dichotomies. But then you've got stuff like the quadra dichotomies, or things like process result and positives negatives you might not even heard of before if you're not into socionics. So yeah. There's a lot of different sides to things, I guess, that we aren't, naturally doing or familiar to things, even from a theory like socionics, for example, too, because there's all these different dichotomies. So
yeah,
a lot of areas potentially of shadow growth.
Right.
What was I just gonna say? I had something else on the tip of my tongue. Forgot it. Sorry. But yeah, I guess, and in regards to that, your system, first is like, your type of socionics, like I mentioned, is the logical, intuitive extrovert. Mine is a bit more controversial on some of the different schools, but in the school that I most favor, it's also a gamma type, like it would be in yours, the intuitive, logical introvert.
Right.
Kind of the gamma scientist types.
Yeah.
And, that have like NITEFISE as their valued function. So that actually similarity. And one thing that some people in socionics pointed out is that your system, and I agree with it, but I kind of like it too, because I am that your system is like very gamma oriented too. So yeah, maybe there are like even more patterns we'll discover in terms of how not even just your system, but all kinds of other systems are oriented towards this or that quadra or thing more. So you'll attract more people who are similar to that in some ways. And over time, we could find ways to balance out some of these different systems. But I like the gamma approach, which is like very empirical, tracking simple patterns and seeing what you can prove and things rather than
Yeah. It's been fun to be on the learning process. It's been fun to
and like not taking necessarily too much pride like in the identity of your type, but more like seeing like, what are the most brutal things that I could say about it to improve.
Yeah. Well, good stuff, man. Where are you at right now? Are you in a classroom?
I'm in the basement.
Oh, cool. You got those fluorescent lights in the ceiling in your basement?
Yeah, that's my office.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm actually in our basement too. I guess it's a basement. It's a downstairs half basement, kind of like on a hill,
It's a pretty bare room. Yeah, I got I can't see like a bunch of books over here and my desk, but other than that, it's kind of like that's all I really need.
Yeah.
I'm not much of a sensory guy.
Yeah. The NI hideout.
Yeah. I got my computer, and that's where I spend most of my time. I could probably do just a little bit less there. Yeah, actually, that's one thing with I play tennis. That's like one of my main sensory habits.
Yeah.
To work out. I played since I was in high school. I was on like the team, and I almost played in college, but I didn't end up because I wanted to focus more on academics. But I've been playing in some leagues, just some adult leagues recently, but with the COVID quarantine,
oh yeah,
I haven't been able to play. So gonna need to find some other ways to work out here, or I'm gonna maybe start gaining some weight or something.
Yeah,
I need to do some running. Get a sensory back into my life because I had it on routine, and that routine collapsed.
Yeah. We see a lot of guys of our types, NITI or NIFI that are into tennis. Seems to be like a low hanging SE fruit, like just enough that we could do. Like, okay, if I stand in this box and I do the same repetitive thing, I can probably get good at that.
Yeah, I think tennis is a good sort of solo sport, as opposed to team sports. NIFIs aren't necessarily the types that like to necessarily get along with the tribe,
right?
Particularly when you've got me, where it's sleep consumed last, or the T's a super demon.
Right.
Because it's single activated demon. Yeah. Well, I guess SC is too, but there was something about I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess with sleep consumed play, it even has I don't know. I guess anyway.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Very, very low for me. It's
right.
a activated demon. Anyway. Yeah, and I've always liked the singles aspect of tennis, so I kind of wonder whether there is actually something to that. Could it be the case that maybe among tennis players that you type, could it be that I think you typed Novak Djokovic recently, didn't you?
Right. There was another guy, Andy, right, NITI, and there's another guy, Andy something, who was his buddy that was also a tennis guy that was the same type as me.
Interesting.
Yeah. Same goofosaur.
Wonder about that because there's some players who are more double specialists who play more of the team tennis, and some who are more single specialists. I did a little bit of both in my years in high school because you don't always choose where you are because you have other good players, especially when you're younger. But my senior year, I finally got to play singles, and I liked that a lot better. So it would be something better for both the DIs, but maybe even OIs to some extent, even the control aspect, doubles maybe more chaotic or something.
Right. Yeah, I remember I liked doubles badminton in high school. I liked the badminton because little birdie.
I have not much lately.
It slowed it. You got to slow it way down. That tennis ball is moving way too fast. That tennis court is way too big. I need to stand in the same spot and hit something way slower, and then just mess around with my one friend. That was the one that I really liked. The minimal effort one. Well, good stuff, man. Anything else you want to cover?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have any major questions. I addressed the questions in the chat. I addressed the questions. Some people, I asked around, if there were some things I wanted to ask you, and some people asked me some things that I also kind of had in mind, but they framed it well so that I could ask it even easier. Yeah, so I think we pretty much covered all that. This doesn't need to go on super long yet, unless more you have to say.
No, that's great, man. It's great, man. Yeah, we could do it again sometime as well. It's
maybe because, like I said, I'm coming out with my videos hopefully soon. I don't know for sure when it will come out, but I mean early May at the latest. I'm holding myself to that, saying it so that crowd, you can hold me to that.
Right.
You can complain if I don't.
Well, it's good stuff, man. Like for me and Shan, it's we've come from the entrepreneurship background where we're using this kind of stuff for business, and we weren't super into the scientific side.
Like how you guys mentioned originally, because I was just reading up like some of the articles on your site.
Yeah.
Like how did you guys even like decide to start doing this? And it like what made you like believe in it? They said that you do, and it was, you mentioned that you were using it for, I think it was an RC business that you had.
Yeah, right.
I remember you talking about that, and you would do your advertisements to like appeal to your customer base, which
right.
I think it was like you said it was SI or something like that.
Yeah, ISTJs, yeah.
Yeah, and it was working, and well, that's cool. Yeah, I like using things because they're working in some way, because it means they're like real in some way. It doesn't mean there's not a lot more to figure out about them, but
right.
There's got to be some reality to it. Like if you're using it in some way and it's working.
Right. Totally. Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm really glad to like talk with you, like you and other people that are like, can we take personality science or personality theory, which a lot of it, again, is coming from very My Little Pony type background. There's a lot of people in the personality that are very NF about it, right? But then there's a few that are like, I want to here's personality. I want to bang it against the side of science, or I want to bang it against the side of entrepreneurship. I want to bang it against the side of, this is really cute. This is very self-helpy. This is really nice. But can we get results in science? Can we get results in the business world? Something to where it is actually objectively trackable, reproducible, measurable in some way, shape, or form, and then encourage more of that, So that's a big thing. Like my personal FI or whatever is like, I'm definitely happy to find other people that in any way, shape, or form want to talk about personality theory and knock it against, tracking it scientifically in some way, shape, or form, or defining the terms more, or in the entrepreneur world. There's a lot of different people that we've met over the years that they have gotten themselves into Myers-Briggs land because they're entrepreneurs, because they're dabbling in trying to figure out people in psychology, and then they'll land on personality type or Myers-Briggs or whatever, and then be able to use that to some degree. It just feels like it's like ultimately we're using it for personal growth, but it's great to have that objective measure to go, yeah, I'm not just talking to myself here. There is some measure to it, in the outside world.
Yeah.
Well, great, man. Yeah, I better get going here.
Okay. I guess I will end the broadcast then.
Hey, thanks a lot for setting this up, dude. Thanks a lot for setting this up. I really enjoy talking with you. I love the video that you're doing so far and the work and all the rest. And, count me in.
I really hope that it is helpful.
Yeah, totally. We really liked it. All right, man. We'll be in touch.
All right. See ya.